Mutta mennään viimeiseen puhujaan. Ja Ayesha Khanna. Hän on iso nimi. Hän on maailmanlaajuisesti tunnettu tekoälyn, älykkäiden kaupunkien ja innovaatioiden asiantuntija ja neuvonantaja. Ayesha on perustanut ADDO AI-yrityksen, joka luo tekoälyratkaisuja ja toimii myös yrityskiihdyttämänä. Ayesha itse on valittu yhdeksi Kaakkois-Aasian vaikutusvaltaisimmasta tai niin kuin uraa uurtavimmista naisyrittäjistä. Ja tämä yritys, ADDO AI, niin Forbes listasi tämän yhdeksi 4 keskeisimmästä Aasian tekoälyyrityksestä. Joten pyydetään Ayesha lavalle ja teleportataan hänet tänne. Ayesha, welcome here. Couple of questions before we get to your presentation. First of all, how has the whole notion of smart cities evolved over time?
The concept of a smart city isn't new. People have literally been talking about it for over a decade. But it's evolved. Smart City 1.0 was largely about technology, and it was very technocentric. And many new greenfield projects did come up with just a focus on the technology and not much regard for the people. However, it has seriously evolved since then, with people insisting that it be human-centric, citizen-centric, and that teams be interdisciplinary. So you don't only have technologists, data scientists, and engineers, but you also have urban designers, customer experience designers, and also anthropologists and lawyers, all of whom together make sensible and responsible decisions about smart cities.
When we talk about smart cities, we oftentimes talk about them in a very positive way. But is there some things that you worry about when it comes to smart cities?
Well, there are 3 things that I always worry about, or the 3 Ps, as I call them: privacy, poverty, and people. Number 1, we have to have a great regard for privacy because we are taking so much data from all the different infrastructure and other kinds of cameras and sensors in the city. This means that the government must store the data, and that data must be in some way, unless it's a national security threat, available to the citizen. Secondly, poverty. There can be a lot of inequity if you have certain parts of the city that have access to better infrastructure than others, especially since education and work are all moving online. So a systematic effort needs to be made that there is equity and democratization of all smart city technologies for every person in the city. And finally, people, people, people. There are many instances when people become an afterthought. In general, what do they want? What are the debates they should be having? And that means we must involve people. The team is not on its own. It must get feedback from citizens. Now, this is a very common thing in tech, where you're constantly in agile software development, getting customer feedback. But for some reason, we don't do that with citizens, and we should. Not only their feedback on the quality of the smart city feature, but also what they think about data, privacy, AI, and we should educate them as well.
Very interesting to hear those thoughts, because we've also talked about inequality and democratization on this stage today already. But now we'll let you give your presentation, so you're welcome. The floor is yours.
Urbanization and technology are forever transforming our lives. The share of the total population living in urban areas is increasing day by day, from 50% in some countries up to 90% in the developed world. And especially if you look at the largest, most densely populated cities of the world, Sao Paulo, Karachi, Shanghai, you see that in Asia and Latin America, this urban migration is only going to increase. In fact, 5 people join the middle class in the world every single second. So what should we build for them? How should they live? How should those of us who even live here expect better from our cities? Well, Singapore has had a thought about this. Known as one of the smartest cities in the world, it has decided to evolve from a smart city to a smart nation. In 2014, Prime Minister Lee announced that a smart nation is a place for people to live, work, and play in where the human spirit flourishes. Now, it was not about technology, it was about the human spirit. That is the key when you think of becoming a smart nation. Now, what does that really mean? Let's look at a very specific demographic in Singapore. We are the world's 3rd fastest aging population. What should we do to make sure our senior citizens are safe? Well, technologists may say, let's build a remote monitoring system in their home, that there are cameras and sensors in case they fall down, or they're sick, or they have an accident. But that's only one type of solution. To really understand how to make a smart nation more livable for our elderly population, we need to do a lot more. We need to step back and think, what are the problems that they're facing? And yes, the elderly do die of injuries in the home, but they also die of loneliness. And in places like Singapore, they form the largest % of people who are injured in car accidents. So keeping that in mind, yes, it is true, Singapore is investing in smart-enabled homes, in housing development board apartments, where the majority of Singaporeans live and is subsidized by the government. And it provides contextual intelligence for the citizens, such as if they fall down, IoT sensors will pick up and inform their children. But it's much more than that. You can't just have technologists, you also need urban designers and anthropologists working on this. Singapore is making every community intergenerational. This is an intergenerational playground right next to a nursing home, so that when somebody who is old comes out, they are surrounded by laughter and joy and children. But in addition to this, given that many die in accidents, an investment is being made in more and more autonomous vehicles in very specific areas where they can be safely tested and deployed. Not only that, Singapore recently also had its first public showcase of the flying air taxi. All of this is so that we have new townships that have autonomous vehicles, public transport, are car light and essentially green places full of sustainable, happy, harmonious quality of life. Now, this doesn't mean that below all of it, a lot of technology doesn't exist. The construction itself should be sustainable, cheaper, and safer. We know that one of the things that is very important is prefabrication. And in Singapore, in order to improve both the precision of the construction, but also its safety and sustainability, a certain % of all buildings increasingly need to have parts of them made outside in a prefab factory. What about the fact that the construction industry is known for being inefficient? Using aerial drones and data collection through them, it is possible to actually have a holistic view of the entire construction site and make sure that the people there are safe, and if there are any risks or delays, they're identified much earlier than they would otherwise. these are some of the ways in which technology is so embedded in the very foundation of smart cities. But always, as I showed right in the beginning, the aim is not technology for technology's sake, but technology for the citizen and his or her quality of life. Now, this is never going to be more important than now. Given the pandemic, new requirements will come to smart cities. And already architects and countries are beginning to think of this. China is working on its first high-tech COVID-proof smart city. What does that mean? Well, it means that the city has within it everything you need to be resilient in a lockdown. It has apartments with terraces for drone delivery. It has co-working spaces, vegetable gardens, greenhouses, kindergartens, food markets. Very much this mixed-use intergenerational living that Singapore is experimenting with is going to be very necessary for hyper-local smart city resilience. And it's not just that. Tokyo is doing it as well. For example, 3 very tall, high-rise buildings are getting a post-pandemic makeover, which means you can pass through the whole building and it's completely contactless. Everything is done through voice, computer vision, and through biometric identification. And given this new reality of pandemics, the surfaces are also always coated with antimicrobial microbial coatings, and the ventilation system regularly recirculates at regular intervals. Even the terrace space is bigger. Why? Because people now don't just want technology for efficiency. They want it for safety, for resilience, for wellness. This is what citizens care about, and we must remember this. So this dog, Spot, could be seen in many parks in Singapore during the lockdown, and its job was to very politely tell people to maintain social distancing. This matters when you're in a crisis. The technology is there not to overwhelm you or overpower you, but to protect you and keep you safe, you being the most important part of any endeavor the smart city takes. Now, many other shocks will come. Climate change will happen, and perhaps there will be more pandemics. In fact, it's quite likely. The way that one deals with such things is when you build cities, you prepare for such scenarios. Before, we did not have this option. It was all done on pen and paper. But now, with the concept of the digital twin, which is becoming very popular, which is a digital representation of a physical entity, could be the human body, could even be a factory, we are able to imagine whole cities as we construct them and make them, what would happen to different parts of it. Now, Singapore is the only country in the world that has a virtual digital twin made for $73 million, a data-rich live digital replica of the city, which gets information from all the sensors in the infrastructure and other kinds of data the government has, and uses it to experiment with new ideas, looking at everything from how a single building, bridge, or road will not only affect the pedestrians there, but also climate change and many, many other scenarios. Now, as they navigate future cities, how will citizens get advantage at the human level, not only in terms of the environment that they're in, but in the efficiency of the government itself? So Singapore has this concept of an AI assistant for all citizens. It's called Moments of Life. And the idea is the following. As you go from being born to studying, to finding a mortgage, to finding a life partner, aging, all the way to planning your estate, should you pass away, the government AI assistant is there to help you, giving you all kinds of ideas and knowledge about what to do, what the regulations are, and what the subsidies are. So instead of having to go through the bureaucracy, which one has to do in many, many, many governments, you can instead have everything push notified to you. Parents will learn about where to take their children for immunization, education subsidies that are available to them, preschools that may match any goals that they have or any challenges that they're facing, and so on and so forth. Now, all of these things that I'm talking about, this human-centric smart city, takes more than philosophy. It takes a very agile government. So the government itself is kind of thinking like a startup. It's constantly experimenting with what to build and getting customer feedback all the time. Is this a startup in Berlin? Is this a startup in Silicon Valley? Actually, no. This is GovTech, a Singapore government agency. And the idea is that it is made in a way to encourage experimentation and to encourage the use of collaboration for human-centric smart city design. In fact, McKinsey has said Singapore is one of the few governments that thinks like a designer. And it is true. The Moments of Life app that I mentioned is being rolled out now, demographic by demographic, but has been in experimentation and citizen feedback loops for 2 years. Now, all of the things that I've said sound good, but it would be an incomplete conversation if I did not talk about the ethics of AI and data. Everything that I talked about uses data. But with great responsibility, with great power, will come great responsibility. Singapore has an advisory council on AI ethics, and they're even working on guidelines for product managers and others to know how to make sure that data is in compliance with the law, that it's not biased, and that everybody on any team working on an AI-based product, smart city or private sector or government sector, is aware of how to make sure that it's done in the best interest of citizens. If you don't do that, citizens will rebel. And frankly speaking, it's the right thing for citizens to do. They should demand transparency and accountability. And if they're uncomfortable with the smart city amenities that are being given to them, then they should voice these concerns and debate them. We know that in Toronto, Alphabet Sidewalk Labs shut down during COVID. And one of the reasons was because they had long faced opposition from citizens over data privacy concerns. So I would end by saying that developing a smart nation takes agility, but it also takes governance. Without governance, you cannot use data and AI. And without being human-centric, who are you building it all for? So as we have more and more new towns coming up in the pipeline in Singapore, lots of new technologies are on trial. And with those trials, one can experiment and see what works best, both from the community and what is best governed easily by those who are using it responsibly. I hope this gave you some indication of how I think about a human-centric smart city. Thank you for having me here.